my dad always told us boys growing up that if two parents can take care of six boys can take care of two parents.
I love your dad.
And it's true, and it makes sense. And so he's always said that we will not put him in a nursing home. And none of his boys would even dream of doing that.
Yeah.
Hey friends, this is Snake on the Table. I'm Tanner Cartwright here with Jerry Doris. What's our snake?
Brother, our question is, how do you honor unstable, incompetent parents? Whew. That's a tough one, man.
It's a hard question.
So I just recently wrote about honoring your parents.
Yeah.
And there I had in view parents that are maybe not Christians, or there's issues, tensions and stuff like this. This question came in from somebody who has feels an obligation to their parents, one of their parents who is I think they were bipolar or they have some issues, and so they're not safe with money.
Yeah.
They can become angry and violent and those kind of things. And what is a son or daughter's responsibility to their parent?
It gets awkward.
It does.
What do you do with a father who's got a gambling problem?
Right.
What do you do with a father who still wants to drive, but he's dangerous on the road?
Right. Great questions. Or what do you do with a father who has gotten scammed and lost a couple $100,000? Stuff like that.
Nigerian prince got him.
Somebody got him. So I would argue, first off, we live in a culture. Let's talk about retirement and nursing homes and what to do with our parents.
Yeah.
What's our obligation to our parents? Because you and I have talked about this a lot over the years. Because I think we both agree that ideally is the situation that happens with a father and mother is that they've raised children, and those children are going to take care of them in their old age.
Yeah.
And it is the responsibility, and that is how we honor them. We don't offload that to to the state and other people. That's the ideal situation.
Yeah.
But we live in a culture now where we have been so fractured, and the mindset has been less children, focus on your career. Women are to be outside of the home, and there's just this disintegration of the family, so that what happens is a parent is aging, and there's literally one child that is in any position to try to be able to take care of.
Yeah.
And it's impossible.
Yeah.
And they're put a huge weight upon them to try to do something. And you're forced to now have to take care of your parents.
Yeah. The last couple generations had one or two kids.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. And so my dad always told us boys growing up that if two parents can take care of six boys can take care of two parents.
I love your dad.
And it's true, and it makes sense. And so he's always said that we will not put him in a nursing home. And none of his boys would even dream of doing that.
Yeah.
Unless he's
unsafe.
Well, I mean, even in that situation, I think there's ways that we would get around that. But, we've talked about building how, as we build, next homes or whatever, at some point, I want to build one with a kind of a apartment built into it with that mindset of someone getting a wheelchair in and out, and having it all built for someone like my dad or mom, been able to stay there.
Yeah.
And so it's and just thinking through all of that. And so, but what has happened is we were taught not to have kids. Women had to have their careers. Feminism obviously ruins everything. And so nobody has kids, and then they get old, and they've got one child, or one, child that is responsible.
That launched well enough to
exactly.
Be able to do anything.
And so you can't, how do you do that? How do you take care? And so how do you do that as one child? And so then people end up we put our children in daycare, and our parents go on, retirement vacation, spend all their money, and then end up in a nursing home. And it's just, we have a disconnected view of the family. We're sending everybody everywhere.
It's screwed up.
It is screwed up really bad. And so,
let me share my own story here.
Sure.
Because my mom and my dad, they went down pretty quickly.
Yes. I
And then
remember,
we
yeah.
moved them into the house. And then it was 3 months after that my dad passed away. And then we had my mom. And they had a kind of a symbiotic relationship where my dad had his mental faculties, but he didn't have the physical ability to do things. And so mom would do the physical stuff, but she had dementia and
Yeah.
had Alzheimer's.
Mentally, she was
Yeah,
gone,
so that was a real challenge. So when she moved in the house, we literally had to fence in our yard because she was a risk to walk off. We had to change the locks in our house. You couldn't have a bolt lock that she could manage.
Had a key lock.
We literally had to key it from the inside.
I remember that you and Michelle like had keys on your wrist, to get in and out of your house.
To get in and out of the house, which is unsafe to begin with. But
Sure.
we did that for as long as we could, and I had the benchmark because I'm here. I'm in my house in my office. It's just my mom and me, and I've got to work. I've got to take care of things. I don't have the ability to really take care of her. My thought was when my mom became incontinent and could not handle bathroom issues by herself, then I needed help.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a season, and then we had to put her in a nursing home.
Sure.
And then we went to visit her multiple times, a week and this kind of stuff. But that was the situation. But that's what we found ourselves in because it's just my brother and I. My brother lives in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
There had to be a choice as to where she went.
Well, there's multiple things there, and I'm not trying to,
And then financially, they had no money.
Sure.
And we don't have to put her into like the really nice places, like even around here. It's like $10,000-$12,000 a month.
Gosh. Yeah, so I don't know how many grandchildren she had, but there's a lot of considerations as far as who's going to take care of her, who's going to do that. My dad, he's got 21 grandchildren now at 60, and by the time that he needs help, he will have grown grandchildren by the dozens.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be so much. It's not going to be like I'm not going to be in a position with my parents where I'm like, I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so there's a reality there of when you have a huge family around you, these things kind of aren't an issue like they are in this situation, like in your situation.
So we're talking about ideally here.
Yes.
This is what we would love to see 50 years from now is all the families of Ref Church are growing and they're having children, and we've got 10 churches now and all this kind of stuff.
What we're trying to say is I'm not condemning you. I'm saying it's not ideal.
Yeah.
That's not what we want.
This is a broken system.
Yes.
And we find yourself. And so the person that wrote this question, how do you honor unstable, incompetent parents? You're in this position.
Sure.
You feel isolated. You feel alone. And this situation is a product of our culture.
Yeah.
It's not just, you're failing. You may, I'm sure, because we did, just carry horrible guilt for I have to do certain things. I have to make this decision here. I'm fought by my own mother on this issue here, and this that guilt is so heavy, bro. Yeah. It's debilitating.
Yeah. No.
So my counsel to this person is do the best you can in the situation you are, and at some point you've got to have help, and that's what our system is designed to create, those kind of helps.
Yeah. So if you have built the relationship with your parents where you have genuinely honored them, respected them, and loved them for years, when you get to this point, it's easier.
Yeah.
So when you have, I think about my dad. My dad's very independent, and he's very it's when I have to talk to him about the keys. Eventually, someday, it's coming. That talk is going to be much easier, I think, with my dad than with most people. Yeah. Just because of the relationship that we have.
Dad, give me your keys. You ain't driving no more.
And you know what? You've got all these grandkids now that can drive you wherever you want. But this is
how humbling that'll be for Ricky.
It will. It'll be humbling. But you know what? We all get there.
Yeah.
And so I remember my grandmother, my mom's mom. She got to that point, and she would sneak and go drive to town to do stuff and my mom was like, you're not supposed to be driving. And she almost hit me one time because she's coming down the road and I'm driving and I'm like on the shoulder, like
trying to get
off the road.
Her.
And she never even acted like she saw me. And I still remember her face, just like never even.
Who's this again?
This is my mom's mom.
Okay.
And she had some thinking problems. And so,
The way you're doing the hysteria one just makes it seem like she's looking through the arch above the. She's real small.
She
lady,
wasn't a tall lady. She wasn't a big lady. But yeah, so the reality is when you come to those situations where you have to address your parents, you must be respectful to your parents. The scriptures require that we honor our father and our mother.
Yeah.
And so we cannot be flippant or mocking or shut up, you old fool. And we cannot do those things. And as frustrating as it is and as difficult as it could become to just be like, because you're dealing in some ways when your parents start losing their mind, it's like you're dealing with a child again.
Very much so.
Yeah.
This strikes home because when my mom and dad came into the house, so they're husband and wife.
Yeah.
And the dynamic between them was not healthy. He would get mad at her because she would forget to do what he had asked her to do. Well, she's got Alzheimer's. Yeah. But
he's stuck there and can't do anything.
He can't do anything. And the only thing he knows how to do is escalate in his voice, and he's yelling at her and stuff like that.
Oh, that's great for people with Alzheimer's.
I know. It just really helps. So to have that conversation with my dad, you understand where she's at and this kind of stuff. And trying to be reasonable with my dad. And actually doing marriage counseling with these guys for the last 3 months of that. But then my demeanor with my mom, it would be really easy to get frustrated that she forgets this or 100%. She's upset about this or she'd get angry.
Or trying to walk down the road.
The big thing with Alzheimer's is it's your emotions is what that codify memories and stuff like that. So big emotions is what she would remember from periodically. But who am I as a Christian? I must be kind and gentle and understanding, and those kind of things are important for me. Even in this, how am I going to honor her? I'm going to honor her by my tone, my respectfulness. Mom, I love you here. Let me redirect her. Those kind of things.
Yeah. Even with your dad there and him yelling at your mom, you don't yell at him to tell him to quit yelling at your mom.
No,
that's we have to be in the same way that as parents, we have to model for our children what it looks like when you're under stress, so that your children are not reacting in a wrong way when they're under stress.
So you're not going to scream at your kids when you're upset.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit your kids.
Yeah. I mean, all parents have caught themselves yelling at their children to stop yelling.
Sure. Yeah. No doubt. I mean,
it's comical.
We've all made mistakes. I've made huge mistakes.
Yeah, but we shouldn't do that.
Right. So the same way, you're not going to do that with your parents.
Yeah.
And even when your parents are doing stupid things, or they're belligerent, or they're, you've got to.
So let's take it out of the realm of disability or Alzheimer's or those kind of things. What about if your father has a gambling problem? Was the example I gave earlier. What about, if your father has, all of a sudden he's getting to the point that he is older and maybe he's living with you, or, he's close to that point, and all of a sudden you realize he's just spending money like crazy and losing like money. And it's like, so then you're torn between like, well, it's his money. He can spend it how he wants, and I don't want to act like I'm greedy for my inheritance. But at the same time, he's being irresponsible and foolish to a level that something needs to be done. Yeah. So then how do you
I think you've got to have a conversation with him, and at some point, hopefully you've had, you've been able to secure things like being part of his bank account, that kind of stuff, having power of attorney, that kind of stuff, some logistical things that you're going to want to do. You might have to limit his pay or limit his, what he can.
His spending money, those kind of things. I know that's just challenging. My encouragement to anybody in that situation is just do what you can do. Be as and be kind and respectful in the way that you do that. You're not going to win this by being belligerent and being a Christian in the way that you're responding to somebody. And maybe you set a budget for his scratch offs or something, and you talk through that with him.
And I would get some on this kind of thing, the financial stuff. I'd get some legal help.
Sure.
Maybe some legal things that can do. There may be some competency issues that could. We didn't have to explore that. Fortunately, we had power of attorney. Yeah. And we're able to take all that over for them.
Yeah. And that may be an extreme case. I don't know. This gentleman that wrote this, I don't know that he did seem like it wasn't Alzheimer's that he was struggling with.
No.
It was more just parents that were just being stupid.
Well, yeah, I think it was bipolar as well.
Yeah.
If I remember right. But anyway, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know if that helps anybody, but my encouragement to you is just stay the course and do what you can do. And at some point, you're going to need help. And I know you're going to struggle with the guilt of needing help. There's a real possibility that some of these people they're able to move around, they're able to get around, they still have the ability to drive and access their accounts, and these people end up being homeless and not wanting to be a part of the family anymore. How many people have we met that are homeless? I've met some here, talked to them. They're obviously estranged from their kids and their family, and it's because of mental illness or different things. And there's really nothing you can do. You just have to come to a place of, this is who my mom is, this is who my dad is, and this is where they're at. And I've done everything I can. I've done everything I can to be at peace with all men. Yeah. And so I don't have, even though it grieves me that they're out in the wild, as it were. There comes a point where you've got to let that happen.
There comes a point there's nothing you can do. Yeah, I think about Caveman here in Shelbyville. Yeah. He just goes around sweeping, lots out and stuff for, basically to get some booze money. And it's like, I'm sure he's got kids.
He's got kids. He's got a dad and mom.
I've talked to him. I've never asked him if he had kids. But, that's just, and he's homeless. And it's just, it's like that's what he wants to do. So
where you can take responsibility, you take responsibility. Yeah. And for as long as you can, you've got to have righteous boundaries. I'd share the load with your brothers and sisters. Have a family meeting to talk about how do we deal with this. Yeah. Don't receive it all. I would encourage that. Yeah. I mean, you've got to share the load.
Spread it out, because if you're doing it all, you're going to be tempted to be frustrated.
You're going to burn out. Yeah. And it's only going to create space for you to sin against your parents in the way that you're responding 100%, to them. Yeah. I don't know if we're answering the question.
I don't know either. I would say deal with the small things. Yeah. Don't let it build up. Don't out of laziness let it build up, because that's when you're going to be frustrated and angry and make the rash decisions and do things wrong. It's similar to parenting. It's kind of awkward to think about it like that, but it's similar to parenting in that when I'm dealing with my children, I have to deal with the small things, or else they build into huge things. And the only way to deal with them is this cataclysmic,
Just be clear here. So you're talking about correctives that are small, incremental along the way. And you'd rather have 1,000 of those little correctives than have one massive blow up at the end because you let it slide.
With children, yes. Yeah. And so with your dad, that may look like talking about the driving way before he gets to the point that you have to take the keys.
Yeah. So we would run the risk of nagging.
Well, sure, but it's like I'm not talking about constantly nagging. I'm talking about sitting down and having a real conversation of, Dad, at some point you're going to get to where you're unsafe on the road. You don't want to be endangering other people. And at what point, how do you want us to deal with that? How do we want to think through that? Yeah. And get his input, and so that the first time you talk about it is not when he almost hits somebody and you're like, give me your keys.
Please have this conversation with Ricky this week.
Right now.
This week. I want you to sit down with Ricky.
I'm going to Tennessee today.
And just say, Dad, let's sit down. Let's talk about your driving. Yeah. You might get clocked.
He'll just think it's funny.
That's hilarious. All right. So I did write an article about how to respect and honor your parents when they're just jerks, basically, or they're not, and setting righteous boundaries. So they're bringing them over to the house, and I want to commend that to people. That's not necessarily what this one is about. Yeah, this question wasn't about this, but it does touch on the necessity for respect. It's a command to honor your parents. Is not something with an expiration date. Yep. It isn't just for little kids that they've got to honor their parents and obey you. That's not that's part of it for sure, but it continues. And obedience to your parents, it changes. Obviously, when you were your own household, you're established as a woman, you're under the covering of now your husband. So you're out from underneath your parents. So obedience isn't the same, but honor and respect are still owed. And that comes in how we think about them, how we speak about them, what we do for them.
And sometimes that means respectfully setting boundaries. Yeah. Be like, y'all can't do this with the grandkids. Yes. Because we don't want that done. Yeah. My dad was really good at this. He would just tell my grandparents, be like, I know you love recording Dukes of Hazzard for my boys and letting them watch it, but I don't want them watching that anymore. Yeah. Because of Daisy Duke. and they're getting to that age. And so he just set those boundaries.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and he did it respectfully. And it's just like, it is what it is.
And so what happens if you cross the boundary? So I don't think there's not necessarily consequences immediately, but you say, Dad, I just really don't want to have these kind of conversations in front of my kids. And then all of a sudden we're having these conversations in front of the kids again and again. You're like, oh, no, Dad, I don't want to have these. And if it happens again, then we're going to leave.
Yeah.
We're not going to come around.
Yep.
I'm not an advocate of our culture pushes this idea of no contact, cutting people off completely.
Oh,
that is a gospelless ideology. It's just so wrong.
Well, you
cannot cut your parents off. You can cut off some doofus boyfriend that is a deadbeat. Like I want no contact with him. But your parents, you have a command to honor your parents.
Yeah, in my mind, this is connected to and maybe comes from the whole parenting ideology of go to your room. The idea of the solution is separation instead of the solution being reconciliation. So the modern way of discipline, I knew people that would, they'd have something with their kids and they'd go to your room. And the idea is we're going to just separate ourselves. You make me sick. I want you out of my sight. You go to your room and just think about this. And it's really a ridiculous way to parent.
Yeah.
So parenting is, we've had sin. There's a situation. There's a problem here. You have sinned against the Lord and against me as your father and mother. And so I'm not going to separate us. I'm going to discipline you so that we are now reconciled and the situation is dealt with and there is no separation.
What about as a consequence?
Separating for a consequence?
Go to your room for a consequence.
I think it's horrific.
I think
it's horrific. I think it communicates to the child, I don't want you in my sight. And so I don't think that's the way the Lord deals with us. I think the Lord deals with us by disciplining us and restoring us.
We need to bring this snake up. This is a good snake. So just to be clear here, so would you believe in like grounding?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but grounding is not the idea of you're separating my child from me. Like that's so So grounding would be like you don't get to do such and such.
All right, so
we've done that.
Yeah, let's put this in this context here is that a consequence for you yelling at me in front of my kids is that, Dad, we're going to leave.
Yeah.
And we'll come back, next week I'll see you again. But, so they're actually, I've put a boundary around the behavior that I'm allowing in front of my kids that I'm allowing would be with me, and you've broken it. Therefore, separation.
Sure, yeah, but what I'm saying is it's not the idea of completely cutting off is wrong. With your father, you don't have any other recourse.
Right.
What do you have?
Yeah.
The only thing you have is to leave.
Yeah.
It's all you've got. How else can you discipline it's weird to even say discipline your father. I mean, I don't think it is discipline, but it's like at that point, it's not an issue of I'm separating from you. It's an issue of you are abusing my family.
Yeah.
And so I have to remove my family because my greatest responsibility is to protect my wife and children.
So the distinction I've made is that we don't do things that are punitive. We want to create a space where it's restorative, that reconciliation is sought. So I gave you an example of where I did this wrong with my dad, my stepdad. He and I, we coached a soccer team together.
Okay.
And not good. He is.
I didn't know y'all were communists.
Yeah, he was not keen to some. There were certain things that happened, and he just treated me horribly. And I just told him, I'm like, Dad, I'm done. Yeah. I didn't talk to him for 6 months. Just cut him off completely for 6 months. Wow. And then I was the one that had to restore the relationship and come back to it.
Do it.
Oh no, no way, no way he was going to do that. That was more punitive. It wasn't like protective. It was
silent treatment.
It was I was pissed and I wasn't gonna
It's like women giving their husbands a silent treatment.
Yeah, silent treatment, not having sex with their husband, that kind of stuff, trying to withhold those kind of things. It's just punitive. Yeah, it's not restorative.
Yeah.
So the goal is
I want you to suffer instead of I want us to be reconciled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of look, Mom, when you criticize my husband, I've told you I don't want to hear that, and so I'm going to end this conversation. I'm hanging up right now, and I'm not hanging up on you. I just don't want to have the conversation, so I'm going to let you. We'll talk next week, but I don't want to hear criticism of my husband.
A wife has a greater responsibility to her husband than she does to her mother.
Right.
It's competing loyalties.
Yeah.
It's competing responsibilities to authorities.
Yeah.
And so, or for a husband protecting his family, if my father, I mean, I can't conceive of it, but if someone's, father were to start, talking bad to their wife or, whatever, that would be something that he would have the responsibility to stop that.
Yeah.
And to remove them. And so, but it's similar to how with the government, we are to obey and honor the government until they cross a line where they say they forbid what God commands or command what God forbids. And then we say, nope, no further. We're not doing this. You are outside of your bounds of what you have authority to do. And so with my father, when he crosses that boundary of dishonoring my wife or harming my children in some way, he's crossed over the line to where I'm sorry, I have to remove them.
Yeah.
Not to be punitive or whatever, not because I don't want to have a relationship with you, but because I have a greater responsibility here.
Yeah.
So it's an issue of degrees and greater responsibility.
And I'm going to be clear with you about what just happened so that you can amend your behavior.
Yes.
And this can be
restored. And relationship can be restored.
And this can be restored.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. So I had two dads. And in the article that I wrote, and that sounds funny. So my stepdad and my biological dad.
Yeah.
And my...
you gotta be careful today.
I know, right?
It's like I grew up with two dads. It's like, whoa.
So I referenced my biological dad.
Yeah.
And he was the one that I was most estranged from, but I had contact with my stepdad. And what I found with both of these men is that I needed to find what I could honor about them.
Yeah.
Because theologically, I could not honor. There were just some wacky issues there. My one was not a believer. My other one had other beliefs that I disagreed with. And so, he's Arminian, I'm Calvinist. What do you do?
Yeah.
When he just doesn't understand, I don't want to debate those issues.
Yeah.
So I found that I found those things that were honorable, the things that they were known for. And then I realized I would seek counsel on those things. And it was a way for them to hear, I was staying in contact. I was respecting them. I was drawing from their knowledge.
Yeah.
I've even experienced this with my own sons, is that when they've called me for some advice or something like that, that just feels good.
Oh yeah.
It feels good to be needed, And so
men want to be respected the same way women want to be loved.
Yeah.
And so if you respect a man and show him honor and respect, that's the pinnacle for him.
Yeah.
That's way more than you expressing love for him.
Yeah.
We live in a love culture, and love's fine, but like men need to be respected.
And I think women are similar in this. I'll give you an example of that is for a daughter-in-law or a daughter or a son to call up mom and say, hey, mom, what was that recipe? You used to make X, Y, and Z. Can I get that from you?
Yeah.
That is a show of honor and respect. Yeah. And I know that's happened with my wife, and she just lights up. Oh yeah, let's get the books out. I'll help you.
Yeah.
But those are tangible ways. So find the honorable thing. Their work ethic, their knowledge base, whatever it was.
If you have an unbelieving father, find those things that you can do. Be like, Dad, can you help me change my brakes?
Sure. Those
kind of things. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm an expert at changing brakes.
and I'm also not talking about flattery here, but because I know that a lot of people have parents that are just schmucks.
Sure.
They've done horrible things in their life to them.
Schmuck a word?
It is now.
I thought schmucker was a jelly or something.
No. Okay. Whatever. But they've done horrible things in their lives. They still it's challenging sometimes to find something, and that's the challenge. And I am holding out the possibility that there's a parent that's absolutely not redeemable.
Sure. Yeah, we're not saying flattery, but we're saying look for the things that you can respect and honor.
Yep. Then the way we speak to them, how we're honoring them with their speak. I just was. I won't give too much details, but I was just in the company of somebody. I was witnessing their interaction with one of their parents.
Yeah.
And the parent kept dropping little barbs about what they didn't do, what they should have done, and what they did this. And when the parent was away, I pulled this person aside and say, hey, I just want you to know. I want you to know that I noticed how you did not respond to that.
Yeah.
How you continued to be respectful in the way, and that the person just, they lit up. That somebody actually recognized that. That's what they were doing. That's what a Christian should be doing in those situations. We should be overlooking those offensive barbs and things that they're saying, and continue to honor.
100%.
Anyways, I'll make sure that article is available for other people.
Yeah.
Show notes here. It'd be good to have. Anything else on this topic?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we killed it.
Yep. It's dead.
Yeah, killed it as in murdered it, not as in we knocked it out of the park.
If you've got questions or want us to clarify anything, you can find us at snakeonthetable.com. Scroll to the bottom and fill out the form.
Send us your questions. We'd love to answer them.
Happy to.
God bless.